In this video, I'm going to share with you who I was during the Egyptian Revolution in 2011. I'm going to introduce you to 3 people I knew personally and they played a role in the Egyptian Revolution and the Tahrir Square. I'm going to share this crazy story where dates were arranged in a way that made me live the most crazy story ever during the Egyptian Revolution. I'm going to touch upon Al Jazeera channel, and of course now it has been we are approaching 15 years after the Egyptian Revolution. So how do I see it? Did I change my mind? Was I wrong? I'm Theresa Khalil. I'm a writer, a documentary filmmaker from Egypt, living now in Europe. Who I was? I was an unusual Egyptian girl because it's not normal for Egyptian females to live independently. And it's not only that I was living independently, but I was also living 7 hours from Cairo in Sharm el-Sheikh in Sinai. I had my own advertising company. I was at the same time publishing my first book, Came and Gone, which is still now in Arabic, and it's a book of short stories. I wanted it to be different, so I was going to include also audiobook and convert one short story into a short film to be included in the CD. I was trying to travel for tourism for a while and I was always rejected because I have the Egyptian passport. And so someone suggested me, why don't you go to an easier country for Egyptians, which is Turkey. So I took the bus to Cairo, then I took a taxi at the end of 2010 and I went to the Turkish embassy. On the way, I saw some people standing, holding a sign, and there was written on it one word, enough. I went to the Turkish embassy, I applied for the visa. A few days later, I took another taxi. As I was going also to the Turkish embassy, I saw the same people standing at the same spot, holding a sign saying enough. I asked the taxi driver, what's going on? Who are those? He said, oh, they are here every day. And they were surrounded by Egyptian police. That was the time when Mubarak started taking some democratic decisions, like for example allowing demonstrations and allowing people or journalists to criticize him in the media. And so those were new things to Egypt because, you know, Egypt was always ruled by dictators or pharaohs who are dictators as well. So I go a few days later and I discovered that I got the visa to Turkey and I decided to travel on 29th of January 2011. Of course, I didn't know at that time that 29th of January was going to be the day after what they called Anger Friday. Now let me introduce you to the first person I know and played a role in Tahrir Square. Let's call him H. H was he's an Egyptian guy. He was in a relation with an Egyptian girl and she was engaged before. She had sex with her fiancé, so her fiancé of course refused to marry her because she was for him like damaged goods. And then H came. He got to know her, she told him about her story. He probably promised that he will marry her or showed that he loved her or something like that. So he was also having sex with her, but he was telling me that of course he will never marry her, you know. And that was the time. I always heard that in Egypt there are people who are having sex without marriage, but that was the first time I meet someone who's doing that because it is something so shameful in Egypt and also illegal. The reason why I was in contact with H at the time is because I wanted to, as I said, make audiobook and a short film, and he already produced a film at the time, a short film, and he got a prize for it. So I thought, okay, would you want to direct a film for my book? and make the audiobook, and he read the book and he was so excited about it. He said, yes, I will make that amazing stories, of course. But then, long story short, he actually started recording the audiobook but never finished. I had to teach myself how to edit audiobooks, and at the time I was not a filmmaker yet. And I, of course, after I got the funding for the film, it was produced by my company and another organization that is financing the project. He just quit, and I had to find another director. So I was in a very stressful period because of it. And how that he didn't keep his word. Moreover, he also took a story from my book and made it a film of his own. He said that he will not pay me anything, that maximum he can put my name, and if I object, he will not even put my name. Now let me introduce you to number 2. I will call him M. M was he was a director at the television, but he wanted to make cinema. So he made just one film before that, and I met him in Cairo. I was, of course, in a very stressing time. As I said, I wanted to deliver the film on time, so I discussed with him the script, and I told him that this film is supposed to be made in no time, no place, because this story can happen at any time, anywhere in the world. It's called The Programmed. So we agree. I go back to Sharm el-Sheikh, and the streets in Cairo are starting to gather more and more demonstrators. M finished the film. He sent me a low-resolution version to watch, and the film that is supposed to be scientific, philosophical, turns out to be a comedy because of how bad it was made. I asked for some modifications. I asked, like, I was surprised that there was a girl in the film who's wearing hijab. I was like, I said this is supposed to be in no place, no time. Why there is someone with hijab in the film? And he said that she's my sister. What is your sister doing in the film? And he said that, well, I didn't find another actress, so I had my sister to do the role. And of course it was a big mess. I asked him to change things. He refused. He took the film, the high resolution version, and he escaped or disappeared. So I'm traveling to Turkey on 29th of January. On 25th of January, which was the police feast, someone called Wa'il Ghunaim, he's working for Google, and he makes a page on Facebook with the title, "We are all Khalid Said." Khalid Said was an Egyptian young guy who was beaten by the police, and he put photos of him after he was dead, and how badly he was beaten, and he was also saying on that page, "Enough."
أنا آسف بس دي مش غلطتنا والله العظيم غلطتنا.
So people started gathering. Everyone is saying enough. What started as just enough started escalating. So enough, that's unfair, كفاية, haram. I'm traveling to Turkey, so I decide to save my film. I will travel on 27th, so I will go one day earlier because I'm going to the studio for editing on 28th, which we knew later it was the Anger Friday. Then travel to Turkey on 29th. I arrive in Cairo 27th. I go to buy a pie from a pie shop, and he make it for you fresh. I don't know if you know how Egyptian pies are being made. And the guy has a television, and it's showing Al Jazeera. Let me say that at that time, as Egyptians, including me, we trusted Al Jazeera so much. So we had the Egyptian media, which was the governmental media, and we thought it was biased, of course. It will always not tell the truth because it is a propaganda for the government. But we thought Al Jazeera is a neutral platform, and that they're doing everything in a professional way. It seems like they have much higher financial capabilities. So we trusted Al Jazeera so much. And that's how Al Jazeera started with the revolution time. And it was our source of information, which I believe what made the revolution escalate. Television was showing amazing shots of the huge number of people who were in Tahrir Square by Al Jazeera, and I asked the PI guy and I said, what's going on in Tahrir? And he said, oh, Tahrir is upside down. Because I was in Heliopolis, which is it's still in Cairo, but it's about 1 hour because Cairo is huge. I eat my pie. The next day I decide, after the Friday prayer, I'm going to the studio to edit my film. And usually after the Friday prayer, the streets are empty. The studio was also in Heliopolis, near where I live, so I decided to take a minibus. I go, I'm standing alone, there is no one in the street at all. After the Friday prayer, I look at the right side and I see something like a dream or a nightmare, okay? Huge number of men dressed in white, and they are holding hands. A huge number, and they are coming towards me. And I couldn't believe my eyes, like, what is this? What is going on? What are they what are they going to do when they come? Like, should I cross the street and go back home, or should I hide in the building behind? As I was thinking like that, and of course no minibus, nothing, there was no one and no cars whatsoever in the street, and I have no idea who are those people. Of course now I know that they were people who were in mosques. After praying, they decided to come out, and because also mosques played a great role because of course of Muslim Brotherhood, so they were coming after the prayer to join forces with the other people who are also in the Tahrir Square. But that was like, the idea was that everywhere in Egypt people go out in the street. So as I'm thinking where to go, oh my God, what they are going to do, I find the taxi passing by. He sees me, he sees the people, those men coming, and he stopped for me because I was like, ah. And I jump in the taxi. I tell him to take me to the studio. He turned in a side street, and I look from the back of the taxi and I see those men walking where I was standing. And then I go to the studio, and it was a Friday, as I said, so the studio is closed. That's the holiday in Egypt. It's on Friday, not Sunday. And I tried to call the woman, the owner of the studio, to open for me because that's what we agreed on, but my phone is not working.
بيقولوا قطعوا الاتصالات.
الشبكات داخل المباراة كلها.
كده شوف التليفون معاك.
Of course, later on we knew that Mubarak, because of how things started getting out of hand, he decided to cut the connections and the internet, including the mobile. So that's why no one's mobile was working. So I couldn't get hold of the woman, and I just took a bus back home, and I felt something was going on. Like this is not the normal situation. So I had a very small television that almost like a radio with black and white. So I took it out, tried to capture any signal to see what's going on, and I see Mubarak talking to the people, something like, it is me or the chaos.
إن خيطا رفيعا يفصل بين الحرية والفوضى.
And of course people at that time thought, oh, he's threatening us. Oh, we want the chaos. We don't care. And really, like, Mubarak was not threatening them. Mubarak was just telling them the truth, the reality. Because people started shouting after enough, and that's unfair. The people want to fail the system. Okay, so if you fail the system, what do you have? You have chaos, of course. So Mubarak was not threatening them. Mubarak was telling them what is going to happen. But of course, at the time, everyone was supporting the revolution. including Western countries, and on top of them, America, where of course Obama later on was honoring some of the young people who shared in the revolution as like those people who are calling for freedom and justice. And this one of my posts on Facebook during that time. I feel sorry for those who lost their eyes and their lives. They are smiling and thinking that this will make Egypt a better country. At the time, I was sharing on Facebook, of course, I was so silly that I was sharing on Facebook that started the revolution, that this is crazy and people should stop requiring change from outside, because guess what? H and M, they were standing in Tahrir Square asking for eliminating corruption and freedom and justice and all those beautiful values. So Mubarak also say that the next day will be a curfew from 3 o'clock, and my plane to Turkey was at 12 o'clock, luckily. So I wake up so early at 9 because I had no idea how the streets will be or what's going on. So I went at 9 o'clock to the airport, and there I saw a disaster. Like, everyone was escaping Egypt at the time. All the tourists, or everyone who had a chance to leave the country, because that was the next day of Friday, Anger Friday. And it was called the Anger Friday because it was the day, because the revolution started on 25th with those demonstrations and continued in Tahrir Square. But then on Friday, when things started getting out of control, people left their jobs and they just went to demonstrate. H, for example, he left his job in Sharm and he traveled 7 hours to be in Tahrir Square to get rid of corruption. And so the police started to taking action, and there were what's called Mawqa'at al-Jamal, or the camel event, where the police was using camels to separate the demonstrators. And of course some people were hurt, some people were shot, and also that's why it was called Anger Friday, because there were those clashes between the police and the demonstrators. And that's why Mubarak announced the curfew for Saturday. So I go to the airport, I found everyone, of course, now they see that Egypt is unstable, so everyone is trying to leave. And it was my first time to travel. So I had a paper from Egypt Air, but I had no idea what to do with it. So I was standing in the Egypt Air office and there was a huge line waiting. And I was waiting from 9:30 until 10, 10:30, 11, my plane is at 12. So I start talking to the guy in front of me. I was like, excuse me, my plane is soon and I need my ticket because I have this paper from Egypt Air. Can I go in the front? And the guy take the paper from me and he say, this is your ticket. And so I said, okay, what can I do now? It's my first time to travel. And he said, go to the gates. And so I take my bag, I run, and it's like in American movies, Hollywood movies, when there is a disaster on planet Earth and you see the main protagonist escaping with a plane, and that's how it was for me. Egypt was burning down, everything is upside down, and I managed to have a seat on a plane that was leaving to Turkey. Of course, my travel to Turkey was just for a holiday, 10 days, but I was all the time watching the television, trying to see what's going on, what's happening, and it just continued. People stayed in Tahrir Square. Of course, Muslim Brotherhood started to playing a big role. There is something that was going on at the time, I call it the lift spirit, or the elevator spirit. It's when, when you are in an elevator and people are trapped inside, and then everyone try to become nice, become like, they know that this is the end, so they start to care for each other, away from religion, away from race, and this what was happening in Tahrir Square at the time. So people started like, It was like as if Mubarak was the source of everything evil, and people had no sins, nothing bad at all. It was all Mubarak, and if we crucify him, everything will be fine. So they started having in the Tahrir Square this what I call elevator spirit, where, for example, Christian, you know, Egypt is 90% Muslims, Sunni, and 10% Christians, Copts, and usually the relation between the minority Christians and the Muslim majority is not the best, because simply they don't marry from each other. So what happened in Tahrir Square is that you could find some scenes like, for example, Muslims are praying and Christians are protecting them, and people at the time thought, oh, you know, once this revolution will succeed and we crucify Mubarak, we will live in heaven in peace. But of course I knew that this is just the elevator spirit, and that once the elevator doors open, everything will go back to normal. I also want to introduce you to someone else that was a client of my company, and this client also, I made work for him and he refused simply to pay me. So he deceived me. And let's call him N. So I'm in Turkey watching television, trying to see, oh my God, what's happening in Egypt? What should I do? Should I apply as a refugee in Turkey? And then I was thinking about it, and for some reason I just felt more like my intuition told me that no, I should go back to Egypt, you know. And I followed my intuition, and I'm glad I did. So 10 days passes, people are still in Tahrir Square, and I decide to go back to Egypt. So I go to check in online. Now I learned how to do things. So I check in online and I discovered that my flight was cancelled. Actually, all flights to Egypt at the time were cancelled because no one wanted to go to Egypt with all this chaos going on. So I put an SOS request on Couchsurfing, and I have a book about my stories with the Couchsurfing community. And I sent the message that copy paste to many people, you know, SOS help me, my flight to Cairo is cancelled, and I didn't want to spend the money that I have in another hotel because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I get a reply from a Turkish guy, and he insulted me, and he said that I have no manners, like why I don't say hello at the beginning of my email or my request. And I was like, oh my God, maybe it's in Turkey that you have to say hello first, you know, even if you are in danger. And I start thinking that, oh, no one will reply to me, or everyone will reply to me like this guy and get the hell out of me because I broke a rule in Turkey or something. But it turned out that this guy is not a good one. And I find someone calling me, another Turkish guy, and he tells me that he's not in Istanbul at the time, but he has someone who's living near the airport and he can host me. So I contact him, and then I tell him, okay, let me just go to the airport, check what's going on, what will happen, and then I will stay with you. I go to the airport, I ask at Egypt Air, and I discover that Egypt or Mubarak or whoever responsible of the country at the time decides to send a plane to get back the Egyptians who are stuck outside. And I was one of them. I was stuck. So Mubarak or Egypt sends a plane, huge plane that's supposed to take, for example, I don't know, more than 100 passengers, and we were only 5 people who were going back to Egypt. And that was the most scary flight I ever had, because it was so cold, because there were not many people on the plane. And as the plane was landing, for some reason, every time he put the wheels down, something happened and he goes up again. So he's lost it for about 30 minutes trying to land, that I almost lost control of my I had to go to the toilet. I took off my belt and I went to the toilet with the hostess screaming, "Where are you going?" "We are landing." And I was like, "I can't wait anymore." It's been landing for 30 minutes. I landed in Cairo's airport, and this time it's definitely not like when I left. It is so empty, and it's only us and another plane from Sudan that has some journalists. So this huge Cairo airport was empty. So I get out of the airport and 2 taxi drivers are fighting over me. Each one wants to take it, because of course there's no work, there are no tourism, so people who are taxis or who earn money on daily basis, they are like, now they're like wolves, you know. So 2 are fighting, and then a third one comes and grab my bag and run away, and I run after him to chase my bag. And of course the airport is so dark. I don't know where he was going. What does he want? Why? I want my bag. Is it safe to chase my bag, or should I let him take the bag? But anyway, I ran after him, and it turned out that he had a car parked in the airport. He was not a taxi, he was just Egyptian citizen. And he put the bag in the back seat and he said, "Right beside me. Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Heliopolis." He said, "Okay, we're going now. When the army check us, you say that you are my cousin." So I was like, okay. So we go. Of course, I'm laughing now, but at the time it was so scary because I really didn't know what was his intentions. Is he really going to take me home, or what is he going to do? So we go out of this dark airport, and the army stop us because, you know, Mubarak let the army take the responsibility of the police because people were against the police. And the funny thing is that people in Egypt, like if you ask any child, what would you like to be when you grow up? They would definitely say a police officer, you know? Or someone in the army. So those are like the sought after jobs. But during the revolution, people just turned against the police as if they are not their cousins, they are not their uncles or fathers, or it was so crazy. So the army check us and they allow us to go, and I arrive home, and then I go back to Sharm el-Sheikh, and that's when I shot the last scenes of my film Sharmar, which is talking about life and people in this unique city of Sharm el-Sheikh, where the east meets the west, and you can watch it on this channel. So the streets were so empty, Sharm el-Sheikh became a ghost city. You can hear music in cafes, and the hotels are all lit up, but there are no people. At that time also I was working with Muslim Brotherhood and Salafis, and they were celebrating, they were so happy. And of course later on they put huge effort for Morsi to take over or to win the elections. And this is what usually happens in Arabic countries, because majority of the people are, whether they are Muslim Brotherhood or Islamists in general, or they are something called sympathizers with the Muslim Brotherhood. So you can find someone in Egypt who say, "Oh, I'm not a Muslim Brotherhood, but I sympathize with Muslim Brotherhood." So more than half of the people are like that. And also more than half of the people are, I wouldn't call it religious. They are like, you know, people who just walk saying Allah, 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 you know. They're like, it's not that the majority of the people are religious. No, they are beyond that. They just... So of course, when you make a democratic elections, what do you expect? Islamists to take power. But back a bit to Al Jazeera and how it played a great role in this, because at the time, of course, now I know that Al Jazeera is by Qatar, they are supporting Muslim Brotherhood, but at the time we didn't know in Egypt. But I started suspecting when once I went to the market in Sharm, And I came back, I opened Al Jazeera, and then they say that there was a huge explosion in the morning in Sharm el-Sheikh market, and the bodies are everywhere. And I just came from the market and everything was peaceful. So this when I started noticing that Al Jazeera is not to be trusted. So now I see that H and M were in Tahrir Square asking for crucifying Mubarak because they wanted to get rid of corruption. And you know what M did at the time? During this elevator spirit in Tahrir Square, he called me and he said, Theresa, I want to give you your film back. Okay. But I told him, thank you so much, you can keep it. And this film actually, I just bury it, even the low version. I don't show it to anyone. And it just inspired me to really become a documentary filmmaker or a filmmaker in general. And I knew that what he was saying was just elevator spirit, and that he will go back to his normal ways later on, because he needs to work on himself and change himself from within before judging others, even if it was the president. And the client who, you know, deceived me and took my money, he was always on Facebook wanting to put his hands on Mubarak. Because for him, he believed that if he killed Mubarak or teared him up, that's how he will be a better person, you know? So yeah, those three people, H, M, and N, and others, they were in Tahrir Square asking for justice and freedom and beautiful values. So for me, I was always supporting Mubarak. The reason for that is that I knew the Egyptian society. I knew that change can't happen suddenly, that it takes time for change. And I knew that Mubarak was not doing anything wrong, whether it's historically or geographically. So historically, Mubarak was just a normal dictator, which is, if you look at the Egyptian history, Egypt was always under the rule of pharaohs who are dictators, or kings, or occupation, or you know. So Mubarak actually was the one, like I would say he was a low-key president, because he was just following what was there, you know. He didn't invent something new. And knowing and observing human behavior, I know that Mubarak, if he just woke up one day and decided to become or to apply democracy, he would be killed the next day, because people don't want change. Like, it's not Mubarak that doesn't want change. It's not the leaders, it's the nations. They are against change. And if they want change, they should start with themselves. Geographically also, Mubarak wasn't doing anything different. All this area of the Arabic countries and the Middle East, they all have dictators, kings, you know. So I just couldn't understand what happened, what ran into people that made them just suddenly turn against this man who was not doing anything out of the box. And knowing also how difficult it is to do something out of the box. As I have this channel, Unique TV, I know that doing something out of the box, you need to be really you need to believe in it so much and be ready to all the hardships that you are going to go through, because of how people are against things that are different. Now it has been almost, as I said, 15 years since the revolution. People started to understand that, and I'm so, I admire so much Mubarak and how he navigated through this Arab Spring and revolution, because in my opinion, he did the best job ever. Now, as you can see, Egypt, yes, Egypt has debt. Yes, it's growing, the population is growing, but now it's opening its doors to all those devastated countries who also had revolutions and Arab Spring, such as Syria, Yemen, Libya, Sudan. And Sudan is so crazy because after Egypt had the revolution, after all those Arab countries were destroyed because of the revolutions, Sudanese woke up one day and they wanted to change their country, and then they thought so hard and then said, you know what we can do? A revolution. And they did it, and you see what happened in Sudan, and now many of them are refugees in Egypt. So yeah, I would say if you want change, I would advise any country, any nation, revolutions are not a solution, okay? And I know people talk a lot about the French Revolution, but you know what I discovered? Or I was reading somewhere that the change happened in France after the revolution after 100 years. So how can you think that this is because of the revolution? You would never see me holding a sign standing somewhere calling for something. But majority of people are, as I have a video of simple-minded people, and they believe that if they went out in the streets and they carried a sign, something will change. So that was my crazy story with the Egyptian revolution. I'm so happy that I went back to Egypt, because after that I finished my film Sharmar and I got a scholarship to do my master's in documentary film directing. And yeah, I like this route of my life better than if I would have applied as a refugee in Turkey. If you are still watching, then you are one of my faithful viewers. I would like to recommend to you my mini journal that is now available on Amazon, and it's many ideas, 90 mini ideas for living a healthy, calm, mindful and creative life. I will leave a link to it in the description box.